LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and also streaming live on my YouTube channel, which I do have to apologize until I get my the computer I normally do the show on. We're not the video's not too good, but hey, just you could, as long as we can hear the show, then we're doing, that's all that matters. But welcome back. It's 420. April 20th, 2019, live from the fortified compound here in Mesa, Arizona. And glad everyone's tuning in today. Got a lot of stuff to get to. And if you want to join me, I want to thank everybody for the continued support of the big broadcast. So if you'd like to be able to help support the show, you can do so at markstevens.cells.com. That's markstevens.cells.com. And also my website markstevens.net. Yeah, I got the old background up, so it's cool to pull that thing out, and I'll start using that again. Just so there's no disagree. It's a show about anarchy. That's what the show is about. It's about getting to a voluntary society. And by anarchy, what I mean, of course, is no rulers. Not that there's no rules. No rulers, no ruling class. And the idea that and why I'm an anarchist, and I believe those tuning into the show anarchists for the same reason, is that it is wrong to lie, steal, and kill and cheat other people just because you call yourself government. That we reject the notion that it is that this group of people that they have a moral right to do what is immoral. That they have a moral right to do what, if you and I did, would be considered a crime. So that's the basis there. If you want to join me on the big show, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. That's 2020 with the pound sign or hashtag. And also Skype, but instant message me first. It is Frank Rizzo 3. That's Frank Rizzo with the number 3. We'll get you into the big broadcast there. So we're having a little issue with the camera here. We'll try to do a little. Whoa. Yeah, we got a really cheap studio here, really cheap home studio. So anyway, what are we going to be getting to today? I'm going to talk about something about court, but there's something else that's going to be in the video. And I probably won't be able to get into as much detail. But it's the idea of the ruling class and how the wealthy who always seek to have a government, is that, the wealthy and the elite, the rules don't apply to them. That even if they are caught and they are even prosecuted, just like the DuPont heir, they don't get prison time. When you have billions, you don't go to prison. You just pay a fine, if that. And so, in that light, and this video, there's a lot of stuff to get in there. And no, I'm not going to clickbait it and say, oh, the top 5 times the wealthy and the elite got away with crimes. I'm not going to cheapen things that way. But there are quite a few examples here. And a really big example that I hadn't even, I didn't find this in my research when I was researching how the wealthy get away with crimes. I don't know why this came up, but it caught my attention. I'm like, how could I possibly have forgotten one of the biggest examples, one of the worst examples of how the ruling class, the wealthy, can do almost anything and not get prosecuted. And the business plot from it was a conspiracy. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. The business plot was an alleged political conspiracy in 1933 in the United States. Retired Marine Corps Major General, one of the most highly decorated guys up to that point, Smedley Butler, claimed that wealthy businessmen were plotting to create a fascist veterans organization with Butler as its leader and use it in a coup d'etat to overthrow President Franklin D. Roosevelt. In 1934, Butler testified before the United States House of Representatives Special Committee on Un-American Activities. It was the McCormack-Dickstein Committee on these claims. No one was prosecuted. At the time of the incidents, news media dismissed the plot. Yeah, see, when you're wealthy, is it front page news about Jeffrey Epstein and the sweetheart deal Alexander Acosta? It's not even a part of the news anymore. They dismissed the plot with a New York Times editorial characterizing it as a gigantic hoax. While historians have questioned whether or not a coup was actually close to execution, most agree that some sort of wild scheme was contemplated and discussed. The fact that they went to Smedley Butler, that's conspiracy to overthrow the United States government. Now, whether you carry that out is not it's the conspiracy itself. And there were hearings on this. Nothing. No prosecution. Nothing. They got away with it. They got away with it. Imagine that. Can you imagine one of the little people conspiring to overthrow the government? Again, so-called terror plots, they don't have to carry it out. They just have to plan it. During the McCormack-Dickstein Committee hearings, Butler testified that Gerald C. McGuire attempted to recruit him to lead a coup, promising him an army of 500,000 men for a march on Washington, D.C. and financial backing. Butler testified that the pretext for the coup would be that the president's health was failing. Despite Butler's support for President Roosevelt in the election and his reputation as a strong critic of capitalism, Butler said the plotters felt his good reputation and popularity were vital in attracting support amongst the general public and saw him as easier to manipulate than others. Given a successful coup, Butler said that the plan was for him to have held near absolute power in the newly created position of Secretary of General Affairs, while Roosevelt would have assumed a figurehead role. Wow. Smedley Butler, I did this video and audio of him, actually, at least audio of him discussing that. There are transcripts of, and he's saying who did this, this guy McGuire. He met with Robert Sterling Clark. Clark was an art collector and an heir to the Singer Corporation fortune. McGuire had known Robert Clark when he was a second lieutenant in China during the Boxer Rebellion. Clark had been nicknamed the Millionaire Lieutenant. Nothing. They didn't do anything. It's the rich, because if you're wealthy, if you have enough money, it's just like, what's his name? I quoted on the show, Vince Neil. That's the power of cash. If you've got enough money, even if they do catch you, even if they do prosecute you, you do not go to prison. Prison is for the little people. It is extremely rare for one of the elite class, especially high-level politics. It is very rare for them to go to prison. That is the exception, not the rule. But it's the opposite when you're one of the plebes. When you're one of the little people, if you're not one of the useful idiots, we go to prison. It's 420 today. How many people? There's an example that I have in the video of a man with 2 joints getting over 10 years in prison. Prison. Vince Neil killed somebody. This Robert Allen Murray falsified a court document to coerce someone to take a guilty plea because they were pushing for a life sentence. Nothing. No jail time for Robert Allen Murray. Who, by the way, I did get in touch with the new prosecutor there, and I was asking, and I doubt I'm going to have to make a call on Monday because I doubt they're going to respond to an email, because I found out about it too late on Friday to make a call, and that was the new prosecutor asked him why criminal charges were not brought against Robert Allen Murray. Since he had done such a terrible thing, and admittedly did such a terrible thing. Well, we'll be back with your calls here on the other side of the break, so don't go away. And for those on YouTube, it is a commercial broadcast. It's a radio show, so just hold tight, and I will be on the chat. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona on this August 20th. It's 420, baby, for the whole show. All 3 hours of Anarchy Radio, it's 420. So the call line, I'm on the call line now. I never take calls during the first segment because it's too short, and I save a little bit of money there because it costs me anyway. Glad to be with you here. If you want to join me here on the big show, it's 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. And again, I know that the video quality is not as good today, but who gives a damn? You guys all know what I look like, but so as long as I get to stream the show and more people can hear it, that's all that all they mad is there. So I got everything. We're gonna get with Tom. Welcome back, Tom. You want to talk about criticisms of capitalism today?
Yeah. Hi, Mark.
Hey.
I'm hearing okay, it's gone now. I was hearing an echo. Yeah, again, Rika made a good point. We don't want rulers, no rulers, but free trade not allowed. How does that work?
Well, who said that?
Rika.
Rika said that.
I mean, who said what? No free trade?
Well, who's saying no free?
How do you have free trade without capitalism? How does that work?
You think that you can't have free trade if you just had socialism?
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. I'm dead serious. Are you? You strike me as somebody who listens too much to another self-proclaimed anarchist who doesn't have much of an understanding of socialism.
No, Mr. Stevens, I'll tell you what. My family lived in East Germany from the time the Russians went in and took over until the wall went down. And I'm telling you right now, socialism completely saps the motivation of going to work. So because you can't keep the fruits of your labor.
That's not a key feature of socialism there. And for those, if you want to argue that socialism kills innovation, please explain to me how many innovations and why there's so many innovations from an organization known as NASA.
You're going to compare NASA, where our money is stolen and given to them, with a country like East Germany? Is that what you're doing?
Well, we're talking about the socialism and critiques of socialism and capitalism, okay? And you're making a comment and a claim, or you're arguing that socialism kills. You're making a blanket generalization there that socialism kills innovation. And I gave you a counter example to that argument to show that the argument doesn't have merit. Because, as a generalization, you're just making a generalization. That's like saying that everything about capitalism is sugar and spice and everything nice. And damn it, it's not. And you can't, and I'm not going, wait, let me finish. And I'm absolutely not going to accept that, oh, well, that's corporatism, or that's crony capitalism, or when the car industries decided it was better to settle wrongful death lawsuits, okay, then fix their damn cars because it was more expensive to retool the factories and recall the cars and fix them. No, it's less money to just pay for the wrongful death ones. And then to turn around and say that that's not a legitimate critique of capitalism. There is good and bad on both capitalism and socialism. And if you make a generalization, I'm going to, and I don't think it's correct, I'm going to give you a counter argument or a counter example to show that what you're saying is not true across the board. You're generalizing.
So now let me ask, well, I want to stick with the car company situation just now. One of the reasons that the car companies could get away with that is because government's involved and they make what's called a corporation. So nobody is held responsible or liable for the death of people. There's the problem. That has nothing to do with capitalism. Nothing. Or the free market.
They made a determination, and I think it was Ford, and other car companies have done this too. They make a calculated decision. It costs them less money because they could be a corporation. They're still subject to, and they have lost cases, many cases, for wrongful death. So the idea that they're completely immune because the government makes them a corporation doesn't hold, they're still held to some accountability. They should be in prison, yes, and sometimes they do. But as far as the car companies, they made a calculated decision. They made a cost benefit analysis, right? Part and parcel of capitalism. And they decided that it was better to pay out, it was cheaper to pay out the wrongful death than to retool. What the hell did that have to do with government making them a corporation?
It has everything to do with it. DuPont did exactly the same thing when they invented Teflon, and the chemicals involved, and basically the exact same deal. They made a cost estimate, cost analysis of the losses, and they can only do that because they can hide behind the veil of a corporation, and nobody goes to jail. If people were held accountable in those companies, they went to prison, that would be a big difference between, we'll just pay out a few $1 billion. That's the problem, Mark. It has nothing to do with the free market. It has everything to do with the fact that nobody's being held accountable in this so-called capitalist society. You name one real, true capitalist society. There isn't one.
Well, but the counter argument to when you give a German explanation is that the problem with the socialism is because the socialists used the tools of government to do what they were doing. So it's not necessarily what it comes down to is it's more of a critique about government and less of a critique of capitalism and socialism. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to excuse all the problems that are associated with capitalism because of government intervention and government help, then the same thing goes for what's happening in Germany and other socialist countries. Okay, I mean, don't you think that's a fair argument that if it's the government intervention that's the issue, not necessarily the philosophy or the principles of socialism?
Well, I will agree that it is the government intervention that is making capitalism look bad. Okay, that I'll agree with. But that's as far as I'm going to go, because I know what my grandfather, for instance, he was a fisherman. His whole life, they had this fishing boat, a big boat, and they'd go out and they would catch eel, and eel is a real delicacy, and they would have a separate tank in their ship to put these eels that they wanted to take home, because they had to turn in all the fish at the port. The communist system would give them what was fair to pay them, and then they could buy back what they wanted. And my grandfather, they would, oh my gosh, they'd smuggle some of their own catch. And my grandfather had a smoke shack, where he would smoke the eel.
Well, Tom, hold on just a second. I got to put you on hold. Okay. Keep that thought about the eels in the ship. We'll be back here. We're talking about critiques about socialism and capitalism, and if all the evils of capitalism can be attributed to government intervention, then why can't all the evils of socialism be also attributed to government intervention and not the philosophy or principles of socialism? Not that I'm a socialist. But we'll be back with Tom from the Big D in just a moment, so don't go away. Yeah, welcome back to the No State Project. It's getting heated up in here always, and I think a problem comes down to is and Tom, we'll get to your story in a second. And just to lead into this for those just tuning in, I think there's a conflating that, and I know certainly people who go under the banner of anarcho-capitalist conflate free trade with capitalism and think that free trade and capitalism are one and the same thing, and they're not. So I would, yeah, I'm definitely all for free trade. But let's get back to your story about what happened in Germany with the eels.
Okay, well, like I said, my grandfather was a fisherman, and he had to turn in all the fish that him and his crew caught. They would have to go to the port, turn it all in. They would be paid what the government decided was fair, and then they would be able to buy back whatever food they wanted, whatever fish they wanted. And he would smuggle his own. He had his own little tank in the ship. Anyway, so my grandfather was smoking the eel in his smoke shack, and this is back in about '66 or so. And my father had a home camera and popped the door open on the smoke shack, and he was recording my grandfather. And my grandfather had a fit because his neighbors could possibly turn him in and be rewarded for it. He was literally scared for his life to smoke eel in his own shed, his own eel that he caught. Now, what the hell is that? You want that?
No, we're not discussing that. The question I would like to put to you is if we can blame every single problem with capitalism on government intervention, then why at the same time can we not blame all the problems with socialism, the philosophy of socialism, the way socialism is supposed to be done, such as like fire departments, which is a good example of socialism? Then why can't all the problems with socialism be excused away as just government intervention and being that it's a government problem? Because socialism at its core doesn't require a state. And it doesn't necessarily. It's just like socialism doesn't advocate for a state. So explain that to me. Explain to me the difference. Why can capitalism with those problems?
I need to be on the same page. I need to understand what your concept of socialism is, because I apparently don't.
Well, I've mentioned this like 1,000 times on the show. I've actually read it directly, and I'll do it again. Socialism at its core is common ownership of the means of production. So an example of that is like a fire department like we have now. Capitalism is, and the main part that separates capitalism from socialism, the defining factor is private ownership over the means of production. Okay?
Okay, now hold on. First off, you're using a fire department as an example, and a fire department doesn't produce anything. So let's get to an actual
come on, Tom. Don't do that. We're talking about the means of production, and we're talking about the ownership and control of a company, for example. Okay, means of production is just a broad term. So whether it's a fire department or it's a factory, it's the same thing. We're talking about common ownership, and that's a defining factor, as opposed to capitalism, which is private ownership of the means or the ownership of a company.
All right, now you've explained it. Now you explain to me, how does common ownership happen without force by someone to make everyone, share everything? How does that work?
Well, let's first address the issue, because you are trying to, and we'll get to that. We got plenty of time. I want still to flesh out the issue and get some discussion on why you think it's okay to excuse all the evils of capitalism on government intervention, but you're not willing to say that the evils of socialism are not the result of the same government type of action.
Well, okay, I like that question, and I'd like to address, like, a lot of times when I talk to people about the free, no state idea, and they all say it can't happen, it doesn't work. And I say, well, we've never actually had a chance to even try it. There's been nowhere that a state hasn't been established and someone takes control. So we don't know how it will work. And I say the same answer to you when you're telling me that capitalism being organized by government with this idea of corporations and being able to stand behind them, we've never had true capitalism. We've never had a true free market. It doesn't exist. It never has. Or maybe way back when this country was first founded, that's possible. But as soon as the taxation started, that no longer was the case now, was it? Or is it?
Well, and we've never had free market socialism either, because of the same conditions. The same conditions that prevented free market capitalism prevented free market socialism.
Well, again, my question is, how can free market ownership of everything be free market? How does that work?
But let's first get to and address and finally get an answer on this. Why is it okay to excuse all the evils of capitalism on government intervention, but you can't, by the same token, or you use the same argument to argue away the evils of socialism?
Well, I think I just explained it. We don't have true capitalism. We never had.
Didn't I just explain that we've never had true free market socialism either, because of the same government intervention?
How can Mark? You're using it's a oxymoron to call free market and socialism in the same sentence. You just said in your definition of socialism is the common shared, like the fire department, and then that's a bad example. Because the fire department, yeah, we can privatize that, and we all need it, yada yada. But you're telling me that you want a common shared auto company?
I didn't say that. Now, I have been on record. Wait, Tom, let me finish. I've been on record that what we have now and what every country, if you will, has is a mixed economy. And anybody who doubts that the United States and Canada and Europe and whatnot is not a mixed economy between socialism and capitalism either doesn't understand the concepts or is lying to you. We have a mixed economy. And I've been on record many times. Okay, we do. Now, I
agree. Like I said, we've never had a true free market.
I get that. But you if you're going to say that and extend that argument to free market capitalism, you have to extend the same damn thing to free market socialism. Socialism doesn't mean you can't have free market. That's just not true. You can. You have to understand socialism better. We have a mixed economy. Those people who hold up their damn cell phones and say this is what capitalism gets you don't understand that the entire infrastructure to deliver that phone is almost the entire infrastructure to deliver that phone is socialism. The roads, the airports, you name it, socialism. The electricity, socialism. The problem that I have with this, whether it's this mixed economy, which I think is fine. The problem that I have as an anarchist is I don't want either one of them to be propped up with a prison system.
Or your money. Or your forced labor.
Exactly. Right? Yes, that's the problem. The problem is the violence. And that's why I have a problem with it. I have no problem with community-owned things like fire departments and hospitals as long as we're not forced to pay for them. And that's why I've talked about this on the show about the carrot and the stick, and where you have corporations, for example, or businesses, if they want, instead of taxing them, they still pay the fees to have these services, which we all take advantage of. But we're not going to use a prison system to pay for them. That's where I see the problem is. My problem isn't, it's socialism, I'm an American. No, my problem is using the force to get the support and that force being used to prop up a ruling class where the rules don't apply to them. That's my problem with it. And we're up against the break, so we'll address what your problems may be with it when we get back. And the number here is 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The criticisms of capitalism and socialism from whatever your political stripe may be. But hopefully you're an anarchist. But we'll be back here with your calls in just a few moments. Don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the New State Project here on LRN.FM, Liberty Radio Network, and live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. Because when you're an anarchist, when you actually challenge and question the status quo and the way things are, claim to have to operate, especially if you're questioning the moral basis and the legitimate basis of governments, you don't live in a house. You live in a compound. You don't have a basement. You have an underground bunker. So welcome back, everybody. You want to join me here on the big show. It is 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with their pound sign. And talking with Tom in the Big D, heated discussion regarding the criticisms of socialism and capitalism. All right, so where were we, Tom? Bring me back.
Well, I don't even know where to go with this with you, Mark. You're blowing my mind. If you read all the comments that have been posted since the last break, I'm hoping I'm going to get off this because I'm hoping somebody that can maybe debate this better than I can do so with you, and I'm going to let somebody else take over.
Come on. Let me ask you this time. Is there any valid criticism against capitalism that you would admit to?
As all these posts keep saying, and as I keep saying, there has never been true capitalism in this country. The moment they wrote the Constitution and formed a government and limited what people can do and started taxing them, that was the end of it. There is no true capitalism. It's never been tried. So I can't explain how it would work without government other than, hey, let's give it a shot. Let's actually try free trade.
So you don't have any examples. So you think that if somebody claims to own a lake or he claims to own a river because he got there first, or he owns, you don't have a problem with that? You don't think that there's any kind of
and that would not even be, that's such a far-fetched, goofy idea.
Okay.
Because none of us would tolerate it.
Oh, okay.
It's just like the Pol Pots, Stalins, and Hitlers aren't the ones that I'm afraid of.
No.
It's the idiots that follow them and pick up guns and enforce what they want to do. Trump could stand on his head all day long and demand this and demand that, and unless somebody with guns supports him, he can't do anything.
Okay. Now follow me here, Tom. Now you say and I agree with you, it's absolutely ridiculous for someone to claim that they own a river because it's a natural resource, right? People need water.
Yep.
Yeah. So what if somebody then claims to own all the oil in a particular area?
Well, if they put the wells up and they pumped it out of the ground, what's the problem?
The problem is when they keep other people out of the area and don't allow other people to set up their own, and where they claim ownership of everything. Look at a mine. You have have one person who claims. Is it okay for one person to claim that all of a gold mine is his?
Mark, you're again not listening. If one person claims these things and everybody else laughs at him and says, "Yeah, right," how are you going to defend yourself against all of us that are now going to take some share of that, whether you like it or not? That ends the problem. The whole idea, government allows monopolies. Monopolies could never exist without government. Would you agree on that?
I think that even without a government, people like the Rockefellers could still have dominated the market the way they did. Yeah. It would have been they would have had to have their own private armies to kill all those Indians and to take people's land. But yeah, I think they would have still been able to do it.
Exactly. Mark, exactly. That's one of my arguments that I like to use when I discuss this with people. Verizon doesn't have a private army to go slaughter the people at AT&T and fight their army. No, they compete they compete with each other. That's the difference. That's true capitalism.
Yeah, but true capitalism was also the railroad magnates getting, and colluding with Rockefeller. That was true capitalism, wasn't it?
You just said it. They're colluding, and even if they built their own private army, it's way too expensive to go to war rather than to negotiate and commit to free trade, because there's way too many of us that aren't going to tolerate it. If one little, even I believe in your books it's even said so, that without government there would still be skirmishes, but there would never be a war because it's too costly.
Okay, so if without a government, the capitalist hero claims that he owns the entire all the gold in the mine because he got there first. Okay, he staked his claim. He owns it. Now, without a government, how does he enforce that claim that he has now private ownership of that? How does he enforce it?
The only way he could do it is with his own army, and that would be far too expensive.
But still the same thing that we've never had any kind of true free market socialism, because the same thing, as soon as government was there, they were doing the dictates. So do you have a problem?
How does socialism work? How do you force people to share their private stuff? Like Rika says, if I can't have my own private property, then I don't own myself. How do you enforce that without a government and an army like we have now?
Well, you could use the same. You could use the same excuse. Like, how does somebody enforce? How does the capitalist enforce his property right claim to an entire mine? Without the government and without an army, he can't. So you've got the same critique against the capitalist as you do against the socialist. The thing is, the socialism you keep painting with such a broad brush. Free market socialism does not require that people that there's force. You can run it again. Let's use NASA as an example, or a fire department. Okay, where you have community ownership. Nobody has to be forced to support that. And for people, to then provide that service. You don't have to use force, just like you don't have to use force, to necessarily enforce property rights. You can have a system similar to what we have now, basically the same, as where you have titles and whatnot. People tend to respect that. Are there going to be skirmishes? Yeah, but that's not a critique necessarily. Again, why we shouldn't have a capitalist type system. But can you at least agree before you go that if we have a mixed system of socialism and capitalism like we have now, but without government and without force, that it could work just fine?
No, I can't agree with that, because that's again, without government, there wouldn't be a thing called capitalism or socialism. It would just be a free market. Those terms wouldn't even exist.
No, I'm good. I thought we agreed to the terms. Capitalism was private ownership of the means of production. Okay, basically of a company, and socialism was community owned or socially owned, or commonly owned. So you don't see as
I don't understand how something can be commonly owned without force and violence. It's not possible.
I disagree with you there. I think that if we were to and an example is what I would like to do. I have to get in touch with some people. I haven't had the time to do that. But if what we had now in New Hampshire, for example, if they just changed the policy and didn't use a prison system and violence to collect the money necessary to run it, and you strip them of immunity and stuff like that, and it wasn't a ruling class. It wasn't them, ordering people what to do. If you took away the violent support, it could continue functioning, and I think it would continue functioning and would be even better. And you can make it transparent, and I think it could function pretty damn well. You still have the same mixture of socialism and capitalism, but you're not using a prison system to prop it up.
Well, again, I can't use a better example than AT&T versus Verizon, for instance. They don't have armies. That is a good example of capitalism at work. They're not killing people. Their product doesn't kill people, and they have to compete with each other to produce a product that people can afford. And the whole motivation is to keep getting that product cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, so that their product will sell more than the other guys. That is a free market. That doesn't need a gun, it doesn't need cops, it doesn't need government, and it doesn't need armies. So again, I wanted somebody else to get in here. So I've had enough of this.
You've had enough now? Oh, yeah. Well, that's too bad. Well, we're near the end of the segment, but yeah, Yeah, I see no problem with a mixed capitalism socialism like we have now. I just think taking the government out of the picture is a good way to go, or the violence. So hey, I appreciate the call, Tom. We're at the top of the hour break. We'll be back in a few minutes. You want to join me? It's 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020. We'll be back in just a few minutes. And if you're on YouTube, yes, it is a radio broadcast. So we have 2 more hours. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break there, tough guys. Yes, welcome to the No Say Project, live from the Fortified Compound in Mesa, Arizona. Second of 3 hours of anarchy. Yeah, we got the banner of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network. That's LRN.FM. And, it's kind of symbolic, though, of really bad thinking, in a sense, because of the colors, because it's black and white. And even somebody is one of these guys... or the dude, one of these guys saying to me, and look, if you want to join me on the big show, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with that there pound sign or the hashtag. And he's saying, if I'm so against capitalism, why don't you give your work away instead of selling it? And it's the same black and white thought that gives... Right. It just gross misunderstanding. Listen to what I'm actually saying, man. That question is no different than these MAGA people and these Republican types is that if you don't like the United States, why don't you get the hell out? And it is what I'm saying, like I told to Tom, we're talking about legitimate, fact-based, logical critiques of capitalism and socialism. There's good and bad with both. But people, Americans in particular, want to just have this rosy idea that that capitalism is the perfect ideology or principle. And that if anything bad happens under capitalism, well, it's not real capitalism. We've never had it. It's not real capitalism. The idea that the principles of capitalism, that there aren't problems that come with that when you put it into execution, is just ridiculous. It's just as we can show the honest critiques about capitalism, there are honest critiques about socialism. And I'm not saying that I've even said here, I think the mixed system that we have right now, which has been in place for hundreds of years, the only problem I see, and that the main problem where most of the problems would go away, and I wrote a whole friggin' book about this. I've got a whole damn book about this, where it's right here, okay? Government indicted. The problem is, and you have all these psychological problems that come in when you put people in control of others with no responsibility to the victims. That's the problem. The problem I've said for years, even going back to government adventures in legal land, the problem that I have is the violence. It is the services being provided at the barrel of a gun. That's the problem. That's why I say on every single show, if I was to do things like the government and I was to force people in my community to give me money, would you consider me a criminal? So I'm absolutely not advocating for using violence. I'm not saying to throw again. I shouldn't have to repeat myself so often. It drives the listenership down. We're doing really bad on numbers today, anyway. But there's honest critiques of socialism. There's honest critiques of capitalism, and I don't buy this anarcho-capitalist crap that everything is sugar and spice and everything nice. Capitalism is there's no flaws in it whatsoever. And if if something does happen, not true capitalism. Just like Tom tried to say that market manipulation isn't an aspect of capitalism. That the idea that you can that you have private ownership of the means of production, let's say oil, and the idea that you can't get together with other people who own their means of production and voluntarily cut your production so that you can justify a higher price, to turn around and say that that is not an integral aspect of capitalism is wrong. Dead wrong. That is what comes with capitalism. It doesn't mean I want to scrap capitalism. I just think people like Jamie Dimon should be in prison for the rest of their friggin' lives. And the idea that corporations, which are just people like AT&T, that they don't hurt people, that I can't. No, that's just wrong too. Just like saying banks don't hurt people. there were over 6,000. I'd have to check this, but there were thousands of suicides in 2008 that were supposed to be related directly to the housing crash. And I can certainly appreciate the stress that comes from financial problems. Anyway, let's get to some calls. We can continue this if you want. Depends on who's on the line. We've got Frank in Austin, Texas. Welcome back to the big show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Pretty damn good. Anyway, I talked to you last week or so. We were talking about something. I forgot what it was. We had a good discussion, but I was kind of rushed, so I didn't really make my points really well. As far as this capitalism is and communism, these terms, I'm highly suspect of these terms in the first place, because you don't use capitalism with your family, you don't use socialism with your family, you play it by ear, whatever anybody can handle. I think that people should really do what they want that works for them, and try to do without government altogether if you have to, if you can. I don't use government much. I mean, I have to because I'm trapped in the system, but I try to live my life like I'm not trapped. I do more contributionism than any capitalism or socialism. I just contribute my time when I can, and I'm rewarded accordingly to what I need. I don't really make a profit. I think that, and that's the way I've always done my own personal business. I don't use banks unless I'm forced to. But there's a lot of corruption in capitalism and socialism, and there's no corruption at all in contributionism. Your work is your money. Whatever you do, if you don't do the work, you don't get the money. There's people out there enjoying capitalism and socialism both, not doing a damn thing, sitting around when they should be teaching their kids something. They're sitting around at their desk or whatever, and they're not making any money at all. They're making money, but they're not making any production. So either case, I think that both terms are coined by corruption, corruptive forces in the world. I think contributionism is what really everybody wants to do.
Well,
what do you think?
Well, I lean more towards mutualism as an anarchist. I think as long as the society is not based on force, and the rules are evenly applied as far as do no harm, then I don't have a problem. Live honestly, injure no one, give every man his due. And unfortunately, in whether it's the socialist part of society or of our markets or the capitalist part, the do no harm is ignored just as much on both sides. The idea, so I just think that there needs to be mutual respect, and the rules apply to everybody.
Checks and balances are very important, which were never followed in the Soviet Union or in the United States of America. Checks and balances are totally bought and paid for.
Pretty much.
I don't understand how either system run by corrupt individuals can be called either one. It's corrupted.
Well, it's always been that way. It's always been a small group of people forcing the community to give them money and to support them, and they have a prison system or a bullet if they disagree. And it's been, and in the whitewashing of history, and I can't stand this rise of white nationalism, that the white Europeans are not guilty of anything. The Indians, deserve to be slaughtered and have their culture almost wiped off the face of the planet because they didn't have the same property values. They didn't have the same property concept. Well, hold on one second there. We're up against a break. Hold on. We'll be right back. We'll be right back in just a few moments here on the No State Project, so don't go away. Sorry about that, Frank. We'll be back in just a minute. Hold your thought. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM. And talking with Frank in Austin, Texas. So I sorry to cut you off, but we were going to get into a break. And so for those just tuning in on YouTube, there's not many of us here today, but it is a radio broadcast, which is why I'm only participating on the chat during the quarter of the hour breaks. So I'm sorry, Frank, where were you?
I was talking about how morally the capitalism and socialism are basically a construct of some type of powerful individuals in the past. I believe like Nietzsche was financed by these individuals. Also, Marx was financed by these individuals. They throw all their cash in the ring and they see what comes out, and then they support both sides. I think that this tactic is very overlooked. It's like a one-trick pony. They've been doing it for 1,000 years now, and nobody's caught on. I mean, Jesus, go have a life. Go develop your skills. Money is not the object. Your skills to help your brother and your sisters and the children are the whole point. It's not about money. Money comes to those who deserve it. Power. It's a power of I can eat, the power I can, be secure in my property. It's psychological. I mean, you have, if you love your neighbor, you're going to make a lot of friends. If you're just charging your neighbor, yeah, it's not so great. I make a lot of friends by contributing what I can, and I have a lot of support. I'm very rich in love, and this is basically what it's about on this planet. You can't take any money with you, but you can take all the love you want with you.
Well, unfortunately, most people are pretty materialistic, and some of us you're forced to have to. You have to. That's the society most of us live in, and what I see is what I like to just, at least in my lifetime, get to at least a more ethical and moral society where governments, as we know it today, are gone, and you don't have a ruling class. As far as what you're talking about,
I agree.
That certainly would help when you don't have a society based on violence, which is exactly what we have now, a society based on violence where it's okay.
Well, I think that violence can be read by certain people before it even happens because they're clean, their bodies are clean, they're in touch with their environment. People who mess themselves all up physically and mentally, they need a government, for God's sakes. It's so sad that they need this government. But a lot of people don't need a government. I don't need a government. I don't use license plates. I don't use a license for my automobile. I don't go to court. I don't get tickets. I get pulled over, but I don't get tickets. And I love everyone. I mean, it's really how you go into this. If you want to fight powers that are giving you the opportunity to make a choice. Okay, you're either going to shine love out of your heart, or you're going to shine fear out of your heart. If you shine fear out of your heart, you get a ticket. If you go into court with all kinds of tickets, like I had when I first began this quest of being free, I had all kinds of tickets, but I went up to the judge and I said, Judge, you got really nice hair there. All your friends, I've met all your friends and they say you're a nice person. Can you show me the charges that you're bringing here, and so I can properly defend myself? Well, I don't understand these charges because they don't have any subject matter clause or any kind of intent to the law at all. How do I know this applies to me? Well, I talk out of my heart, and I get a response let that man go, or can we make a deal?
Yeah,
We're not going to,
I wish that
you
was
know,
a tactic that we could just, be respectful and loving, and that would help. But it doesn't tend to work out that way, unfortunately. So it really is. It's unfortunate
it does work out. It does work out if you take charge. If you're going to take charge or be pushed around, you have a mentality when you go into a situation. Are you skillful enough to understand that these people have demons, that they have negative thoughts all day? What are you going to do to serve these people? They're your brothers and sisters. They're recalcitrant. I can't argue with that. They're very recalcitrant. But how do you treat a public servant who's recalcitrant? Do you try to throw them in jail? Maybe sometimes you do, but not always. Sometimes you want to say, look, we live in the same neighborhood. We live in the same area. I see you at the supermarket, whatever. It's about politics.
Yeah,
politics.
but Frank, I gotta move
your power.
I got a line of calls I've got to get to, but
I know.
I
but
wish.
What do you think about that? What do you think about it? It's all politics.
Oh, I agree. About being nice and respectful, but that alone is not going to get. That alone is not an effective legal defense. That's the beginning of one, but it's certainly not something that's going.
Oh no. You got to have the skills. You got to have the skills to back it up. I'm not saying that you can just go in there and be nice to a criminal who's trying to destroy you. I'm saying that understand that your skill set is what you're carrying with you. You don't need a lawyer. You need to be a lawyer. You need to be the best lawyer in town. You need to start this education when you're 8, and you need to understand that there's a war out here. There's a war going on out here. My mother told me there's a war out here.
Well, they're certainly using violence and a prison system to get what they want and to keep them propped up, and they keep letting the elites get away with things that would get us decades in prison. So I appreciate the call, Frank.
I'd like to talk to you next weekend about a different topic because I'm pretty skillful about these things, and I'd like to share.
Okay, well, we'll have if we're live, we may be live next. Yeah, we're probably going to be live next week. Actually, 2 weeks in a row would be nice. So, give us a call.
Okay, bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Frank in Austin, and it may be a little bit. Is there a war? Yeah, well, if you're poor and you're out there on the street, you certainly, it does seem like a war. The number of cops that wind up shooting people, especially unarmed people that are poor, it does seem that way. The numbers don't lie. And we got Mike in North Carolina. Oh, actually, we are right up against the break. So, Mike, just hold tight. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No Say Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. We'll be back with your calls in just a moment. It's 218-632-9399, and the passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. So don't go away. And if you're on YouTube, I will be responding to the chat. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM. I'm glad I caught it, but for some reason the YouTube comments it flags when like Tom you mentioned he hasn't met Dick Noble and it flagged it. It's a little bit too much moderation there. But welcome back. You're listening to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network, streaming live also on my YouTube channel, No State Project. And the podcast for the show will be available today. I'll pull this video down, and there'll just be audio only, but we'll have all the good audio up here today. So yeah, if you want to join me on the big show, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the £. And we got Mike from North Carolina, and I think I know what you want to talk about there, Mike.
Hi, Mark. Good afternoon. With the conversation, 2 conversations ago, it reminded me of a episode of Bonanza that I saw not too long ago, where the Cartwrights had stepped in to help this Indian, and they were going to help him with a lawyer and all this stuff, and they were, shelling out money. And the Indian's looking like, I don't know what you're going to give him this piece of paper, and he's going to take that? And, he was like, don't you want a beaver pelt or something, or, something useful? It just struck me funny that way, that's all.
I since I spend a lot of time in California, my father-in-law is an older guy, and we usually spend a lot of time watching shows like that. I don't recall that one, though. I've seen an awful lot of Bonanzas, and not my favorite show, but don't remember that one. But that does, I have to look for that one.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it, the episode or anything like that. It just, as they were going through it, and I was like, wow, okay, that makes sense to me.
What I always noticed was how they shows back then, they always tended to show the Indians as savages, not worthy of any consideration, and black people always portrayed prior to 1960, or at least 1955, were always portrayed as half retarded. You watch something like The Three Stooges, and you can't believe how non-whites were portrayed. It's just disgraceful. But Bonanza not so much though. But
That one episode just, I don't know, it threw me for a loop for a moment. I didn't understand what was going on at first.
Yeah. I've seen so many of these old Westerns now, and it's usually the same tropes. White man good, Indian bad. I think there was, I can't remember the name of it, but it had to do with Cochise, and it was made in 1950 or so, and it was hailed as one of the first movies that ever portrayed Indians in a more realistic light. And so it was, and not too many after 1950, of course, but they go back to the same stupid tropes. But I think it goes back. It's this whole white nationalist thing that Ayn Rand really pushed, that the Indians were savages, and they were they were inferior to the Anglo Americans because they deserved what happened to them, to be put on reservations and have their culture destroyed, because they did not accept the Western principles of property. She actually wrote that. They deserved it because they didn't hold the same concepts of property. And people, follow this woman as if she was some kind of philosopher. I don't know. I don't get it. I know it's not what you're called about, but it just kind of led that way.
I've heard a little bit of her work. I haven't read book or anything like that. So I can't share an opinion on that at all.
Oh gosh, you look it up, and she thinks abortion's a property issue. Everything under the sun is property. Abortion is a property right issue. She has the absolute right to expel property from her property. Her body is property, and I thought that the idea that people were property was done away with. But I thought we've moved past that, but no, there are still people that believe that that a human body, a human, is property. All right.
All right. Well, for taking the call, and, always a pleasure, Mark.
Appreciate the call, Mike. And if there's any good news and updates, let me know.
All right, will do. Thank you.
Appreciate the call, Mike in Northern California there. And got the number here is 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. You can also go to Frank Rizzo 3 on Skype. But I haven't even checked it. But go to call during the live broadcast. So, and Home Bumnet. Yeah, we're glad to have you along there. Yeah, I tell you and I've talked about abortion on the show before, and Jace is saying my body is my property. I think your body is yours, but I think the trying to put a property label on a human body just seems repugnant to me. I just I don't get it. I'll say the number again. It's 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. Passcode is 2020 with the pound sign, and that'll get you into the caller line. So I just I just can't accept this. I know it's a very common talking point with libertarians and some anarchists. You own yourself, and all of anarchism comes from self-ownership. And I disagree with that. I think you are yourself. I think it's wrong to try to paint it as the principle of anarchy, or any principle of freedom or moral principles hinges on whether you accept the argument that you own yourself. You are yourself. You're not somebody else's property. Your body is not property. I cannot accept the argument that the human body is reduce it to just a possession of property. No, we stopped seeing we should have stopped seeing human beings as property a long time ago, an awful long time ago. But so the principle of liberty and anarchy has no rulers, and that because it's wrong to lie, steal, kill, and cheat other people because you call yourself a government. It's just wrong to hurt other people. The concept of property, my body being property, is not necessary to the argument. It's not necessary to the principle. So I don't think that anarchy begins with that I own myself. I am myself. It's wrong to hurt other people, not because you're hurting their property if you punch them in the face. It's wrong because you're hurting them. The issue of property in your body being property is just, I don't accept that. So these self-proclaimed anarchists, I think to start from a faulty premise like that is just wrong. Argue better. It's wrong to hurt other people. Very easy. We'll be back with your calls. It's 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. We'll be right back. For those on YouTube, it's a radio broadcast, so I'm not going to be, and it's easier for me to edit. So that's why I mute up. But you can get me on the chat. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, baby. LRN.FM and streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project over here. And yeah, taxation is theft. I've said government is a criminal organization. I think I've been very clear on that. I don't think even critics get that part of my my show correct. So nobody who's a longtime listener to the show needs to text me and say, "Hey, is taxation theft?" Yeah. When you force somebody to give you money, a perfect stranger, okay, when you force someone, a stranger in the community, to give you money, yeah, that would be an act of aggression, and that would be immoral, and I think that is theft. So, yeah, we got home bumming it back on the show from Riverside, California. How you doing today?
Oh man, let's not go there. Okay. Uh, yeah, this whole thing about your body is property, and uh, you know, uh, lying is theft. Well, lying might be theft in the sense that you're not able to make a informed decision. But the idea that your body is property, I think, is being mainly propagated through Mark Passio's work, which he's just, I mean, he's tyrannical in his message, and he doesn't allow comments on his channel. He doesn't, allow people to talk to him or give him any suggestions or ideas or anything. He doesn't want to hear it, and he has this tough guy sort of mentality, which is pretty pussy as far as I'm concerned. No offense, but he doesn't. Yeah, that whole idea. I mean, the guys on Discord, they got it through my head about re-edification, which is that if you think you have a right, pull it out of your pocket and show it to me. But in actuality, we don't. We only have what they say we have. Now, at the same time, you got to admit, thoughts, emotions, they have no physicality. And that is not re-edification to say that you have thoughts and emotions. Those are actually real. They exist. But I don't think that, I personally would explain it as being something of multidimensional beings. There's only expression of thought. There's only expression of emotion. But there's nothing where you can't buy a bottle of happiness over at the corner store, unless you consider, alcohol to be happiness. But it's this idea that everything is physical isn't necessarily true, and the idea that everything that is not physical, it doesn't exist, isn't true either. People like the idea of being tough and badass, no offense, but it's not. It's a gimmick. It's a sale. They're selling you, an egotistical point of view that's not, that has no compassion or empathy or is just kind of a overbearing, domineering, anger-based concept. And two things I watch out for personally are fear-based thought and anger-based thought. If my thoughts are based out of fear, I'm doing it because I'm afraid, it might not be the best thing to do. If I'm acting out of anger or my thoughts are based out of anger, then it might not necessarily be the right thing to do. It's better to cool off, think things through, and evaluate what it is you're doing. One of the things that kills me is these guns. I enjoy marksmanship just as much as the next guy, filling off and shooting off 100 rounds. But
let's try to stay focused here now, home bumming it. I mean, what are you getting at?
I'm going all over the place. Go ahead.
Yeah. What do you, just in a nutshell, what are you trying to say?
Well, the idea that your body is your property,
Yeah,
uh, yeah, it's an old concept. I
it
mean,
is.
well, it's like you said, it was something that was the idea of slavery being a human body as property. Um, you can't separate the body from the mind unless they're dead.
Yeah, but this is not making a whole lot of sense there. I think what you were mentioning before was reification, which I wrote about in the book, of course, and that's when you think that something in your head is actually real, is concrete. Thoughts can be measured, of course. They can be seen on a brain scan. The thoughts are real, but they're not outside of your head unless you start talking. So what I was getting to was that, and I don't know, somebody can call and disagree with this. I just don't see that. I don't accept the premise of the argument that the human body is property. Property implies that you could not, look, is it just it can be owned. And I just don't I don't get that. I reject the argument that the human body can be owned, whether by yourself or by anybody else. I think it's a bad argument, and I don't think that if you're seriously going to argue about anarchism, which is a very tough sell anyway, then I think you should start from a pretty firm foundation, and having a foundation based on, and not all of them do this, but some of the more vocal ones will say this, that the beginning of anarchism or voluntarism is the premise that you own yourself. And no, the beginning of the anarchism is the rejection of a ruling class on the grounds that it's wrong, that it's immoral, it is, and I've said this on the show several times already. It's wrong to lie, steal, kill, and cheat people because you call yourself a government, not because I own myself. That doesn't even have to enter into it. It just seems to and if people understood better the moral aspect of it, that they believe that they have a moral right to do what is immoral, I think it's a lot easier to demonstrate that to people and have them understand that, as opposed to starting from a sandy foundation, a faulty foundation. Well, you own yourself.
I think people need to actually also be aware that all these people that, I don't care if they call them government or if they call them Susie, if they go ahead and they're doing something that damages somebody else, there is a subliminal pain that you cause yourself when you are damaging other people. And all these people that are messing up the world for a paycheck, they don't realize the emotional and the spiritual damage that they're causing themselves on a subconscious level. They're not aware of it. This is, women with daddy issues, subconscious, drug addiction, subconscious, all these things that we see the results of is due to subconscious damage that people aren't aware of. And, it's just like I went ahead and I made a video pointing out about one of the ex-mayors of San Diego who ended up having a gambling problem, right? And got into debt for $1 billion or something like that. And of course, she was one of the ruling class, so they kind of, slapped her on the wrist and let her go. But I think it's deeper than that, and that's just it. Everybody looks at the leader of this civilization, this organization we call civilization, and they think that that's the way to be. But these people I don't think that they're as aware of themselves.
Well, they probably aren't, but I'm at the top of the hour break, so I got to let you go. I appreciate the call. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM. We're going into the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio. If you want to join me, it's 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the pound sign. So we'll be back in just a few moments. Don't go away. And for those on YouTube, again, this is a top of the hour break for a radio show. So please be patient. I'll be right back. I will be back in a moment, and I'll address comments on the chat. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project. I'm your host, Mark Stevens, author of Government Indicted, author of, and also of Adventures in Legal Language. You can get at markstevens.net. If you want to help support the show, which is appreciated, you can do so at markstevens.net and also markstevens.sales.com. If you want to join me on the big show, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. As usual, we had a tech issue, but I think the caller line is fixed for whatever the hell that problem was. I think it went away. So for those just tuning in, yes, every quarter of the hour, since this is a radio broadcast, there is a commercial break. So every quarter of the hour. So we only have 3 more for this show because this is the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here. And so this is the first show with the Anarchy banner back. So I might be using that a lot more. Just so there's no misunderstanding. The show is about anarchy, and of course, always having to define the terms. Anarchy meaning no rulers. Actually, I had somebody on the show that thought it was chaos in government, which I don't know where. I just didn't get that at all. But it's from people like myself who call ourselves anarchists, or the more socially acceptable voluntarist, do so because we reject the concept of a ruling class, and that it's okay to lie, steal, and kill and cheat other people just because you call yourself a government. That if it's wrong for me to force someone in the community to give me money, a stranger, then it's wrong for anybody to do that. And even if I got together with a few more of my neighbors, it would still be wrong. That the numbers, do not negate the moral nature of the act. So there, I do not consider myself an anarchist because I believe I own myself. I think that is a wholly irrelevant, an unnecessary addition to the anarchist position or voluntarist position. It's repugnant to me, the ownership of that the body is property, and I don't accept that. I'm not a follower of Ayn Rand, so I reject this idea of the body as property and the idea of using abortion as birth control. Always going to be immoral. I'm not talking if the mother's life is in danger. But, okay, when it's a medical necessity, when someone just doesn't want to have the kid, immoral. It's not a matter of property. That's just a way of excusing it. And using property rights, things like that, has been used to justify some pretty heinous things, including the genocide. I know someone, I don't want anyone, so-and-so did a video and he said there's no such thing as an Indian Native American genocide because they're still Native Americans. I'm not full creationist on that one. From the grandest reaches of the human intellect. Just because the Indians did not accept the concept of property doesn't mean it was right to try to annihilate them. And for those who think it was government policy to annihilate and genocide, and the fact that they didn't accomplish it does not mean that they weren't trying and it wasn't a genocide. You can still see online, you can see pictures online of it, and it was policy. It's admitted policy they were destroying their food supply. They would, and they forced their children. I mean, my gosh, in Canada, they were doing it up until just like 1980, where they would take their children to re-educate them to the Western European way, and destroy their language and whatnot. Look what they try to do. Yeah. And okay. So I don't agree with the argument that we even need the argument to argue successfully and show the merits of anarchism by saying that it starts with self-ownership. No, it's wrong. You need rational secular ethics. And that's why government is wrong. That's why a ruling class is wrong. The idea that someone has a moral right to do what's immoral, it's ridiculous. That argument in and of itself shows what is the basis of anarchy, not saying that, well, I own myself. No, you are yourself. Why do you have to add in ownership? Not everything is about property. It's like the god of some ANCAPs and some anarchists. Property, and on the first day, property was created. No, property is important, but it shouldn't substitute or be used as an excuse to hurt people. The number is 218-632-9399. Did Home Bumming It? Did you have? I'm sorry. Did you have something else to add?
Oh, I didn't know if I was hung up on by accident or on purpose.
Okay. I'm sorry, but we got I've got a few minutes left in the segment.
Okay. No,
Work with me.
It's always the people that are in charge of an organization that go ahead and create the tone of the culture of that organization. And I think that, as long as people are looking up to, figures like Trump or Nancy Pelosi or, Obama or any of them, and we always assume that the way we are today and who we are today is the correct way to be for everybody else. And it's just not necessarily true. And I think that, as long as we accept the values and the beliefs and the systems that we've been indoctrinated with through the Prussian education system, that we're never really going to be able to get past the whole idea of needing a ruling class. And I think that you're right about a lot about the idea that a lot of people that are in the anarchist movement, they don't want rules. They're more about, well, what I say is right, and if you don't like it, tough shit. And that's the exact same thing that the ruling class tells us. So if we're not going to be like them, because really, something is going to have to change. Something's going to have to be in the mind state, in the state of mind that we're in. Something is going to have to change, or we're going to become exactly what we hate.
Well, I don't know about that. I think something does have to change. We need some social evolution. We have to stop accepting that there are a group of people that the rules don't apply to, and move towards stopping what props them up, and that is getting rid of the compulsory violent support for them, and having a transparent system where you have the services that are provided communally or socially, like the same services now. We're not like roads and whatnot. We're just not using a prison system to pay for it. And so much will fall from that to where, and I wish I had the time in the segment, but so that you don't have things like monopolies, so you don't have things like with the telecommunications industry where you have a monopoly because of government giving them that. We'll finish in the next segment, so just hold tight there at Home Bumming It. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on the LRN.FM, and I do want to address, and I will address the question, Jet 8888 says, if you don't claim yourself, are you leaving yourself vulnerable for someone else to claim you? So now, and I'll get to that in the next segment as well. So don't go away. We'll be back in just a few moments. Welcome back. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project. Let's get back to the phones. We got a home bumming it. So just pick up where you left off.
Okay. So the last thing was, how do we get these order takers to stop taking orders and actually think about what they're doing? Because their actions what they're doing is without conscience. They cannot. A lot of them will tell you they follow the orders whether they like them or not.
Yep.
And that's something that they are doing without conscience. So if you show them, a lot of them don't really think of it that way. If you show them that this is an unconscionable job, an unconscionable thing that they are doing, and that it is harming them on a subconscious level, because a lot of them end up going home and beating on their families, then they will go ahead and they'll think about it. They'll realize it, because a lot of people want to go ahead and pick up a gun or get into a fight or act out of anger. And that's what I think that would be a big problem. You'd end up having a big bloodbath. And I don't think that would change anybody's mind.
Well, no, you see, the thing is, it for the vast majority of bureaucrats and cops, they're not going to stop doing what they're doing as long as they're feeding their family, as long as they're able to get paid and get a pension. They don't give it. They don't. It's just like someone who's really, really wealthy. They don't have to care. They may not necessarily be a psychopath, a diagnosable psychopath, but they have the privilege of not caring. And that's what money does to people. Not all, but that's what it tends to do. So we have to have an alternative. I don't think we're going to get anywhere by trying to convince police officers. These are useful idiots. These are guys who will tell you without a hint of shame whatsoever, I take orders. Cops take orders and cops give orders. They're not paid to think. They're not paid to have a conscience, and they're not paid to do the right thing. And it gets to what you were mentioning before, that the tone is set by the top. Management sets the tone. So, for example, I think you're right, because if management will not enforce the rules to keep the company, the employees safe, for example, and that it enforced the rule, basic principles of do no harm, where there's, like not having a hostile work environment. If the management allows that to happen, that is going to corrupt the whole damn thing. That's the whole few bad apples thing, because it infects the whole system. Because now what you have is a situation where nobody wants to be a whistleblower. No one's going to say anything because they're going to be retaliated against. So that people keep their. So you can have somebody who otherwise would stand up and say something, but because the management is so bad, then look, I speak from experience. A family member of mine where they allowed somebody into a position of middle management that was so bad and so against the company policy, but because they were having a sexual relationship with upper management, HR said there was nothing that could be done. So what you had was a mass exodus. They said, "Oh, you're saying I'm a fungal to me? No, I'm a fungal to you." And so you had an exodus of really good, talented medical professionals who wound up leaving the department or the hospital because the management would not do the right thing. And I think what we have to do is educate people who can actually do something, educate the people, and try to get the policies changed.
And I think that you're also right on the fact. So there's got to be a multi-pronged approach to this, because you're also right that the money is a control mechanism, and there has to be an alternative for them to go ahead and feed their families.
Yeah. I mean, I had spoken about a number of alternatives, but nothing actually worked out. And it's hey, okay, maybe it just wasn't a good idea. I can accept that. Obviously, history teaches me that. But if we're looking at changing the policy, I think if you change the policy, if you actually we can get to a point in New Hampshire, for example, where prosecutors and judges and police officers and bureaucrats are stripped of their immunity. They are now responsible for the damage that they cause, and it's not being supported on a violent, compulsory basis. I think that will have a major psychological change in the type of people who are bureaucrats, because they have one of the key things missing is responsibility to the victim. And I go through in Government Indicted what that does to your psychology and how that changes your behavior. Bring back to where they're not above us. So you level the playing field. The cop is just out there actually trying to protect, life, liberty, and property. Okay. And he's fully responsible for the damage that he causes. That's going to change the way they act. That's going to change the type of people that get in. And if it is transparent and they are responsible and whistleblowers are not, excoriated, then I think that's going to go, it'll be a big step in our social evolution and how these people treat us.
And if we could go ahead and drop a peg and drop the ruling class down a peg by admitting that money is a control mechanism and doesn't have anything to do with deserve, then we could go ahead and people won't be looking up to them as being so wonderful and great just because they have more.
Well, yeah, one of the few things I agree with Rush Limbaugh on, and because I think the man is a disgusting example of human. I can't stand the guy, but he did say something that I got to agree. That's right.
Addict. He's got emotional problems.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, he's a shill. He said government is a get rich quick scheme, and I'm paraphrasing that. And and on that he is absolutely right. There's so much money by becoming a bureaucrat, becoming a part of the ruling class, that of course that, together with no responsibility to your victims, of course is going to be problems. So that's why we've got to get rid of the compulsory nature, strip them of their immunity. They're just employees. They're not honorable unless their actions show it, and treat them. Then they get treated just the same way that you and I are. If I was to, do some of the things that, look, if I just collected money, by force from my community, I'm a criminal. If those rules are accepted across the board, and enough people accept the basic logic that it is wrong, that they do not have a moral right to be immoral, yeah, things can start to change.
Yeah.
Not till then.
Yeah.
People have to, as long as people accept them as authorities and that they have a moral right to be immoral, nothing will change. Nothing. We're at. I have to get some other calls. We're up against. Wow, we got a lot of calls. All right, Home Bum, and I appreciate the call. Glad we could discuss that. We'll be back here with your calls. Wow, we only have 2 segments left, so we'll do what we can to get everybody. We'll be back in just a few moments here on the No State Project. So please don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, and streaming live on my YouTube channel. Here on YouTube there, No State Project. Get subbed if you're not, because we're going to try to do the role-playing after the show today, but, maybe at 4:15 Pacific time, maybe maybe within a half hour of the live broadcast, so we maybe get more participants doing that. So if you are prepping for court and you want to do some role playing, or maybe even just hear it, which I highly recommend you doing, we're going to do that after the show. Contact me at Frank Rizzo 3 on Skype, and I get you the Discord link, and we'll take it from there. Before I get to the call, I just want to address this question. If you don't, Jet 888 is saying, if you don't claim yourself as property, as your own property, don't you leave yourself vulnerable for someone to claim you? You don't need to say that you own yourself to defend against a claim that somebody owns you. At least, from my perspective. I'm not your property. It ends the discussion. I don't have to say, I'm not your property. I'm my own property. I mean, is it me, or does that really sound stupid? You don't own me. I own me. Look, I guess maybe because I had to, pound it into my head about being terse and making sure that your argument is terse. Just say what needs to be said. And so if somebody is actually going to be making a claim that they own me as property, I just no. And I'm not your property. I don't need to add because I am my own property. I don't need to do that. I don't see the benefit of doing that. So if someone is going to claim you as property, they do it now. They claim that they own us, basically. Well, they don't say ownership, but they certainly act in a manner that they have a right to tell us what to do and punish us if we don't, whether we're hurting someone or not. So, I don't think you need to claim ownership of yourself to exercise self-defense. And I don't think your exercising of self-defensive force hinges on the premise if you own yourself. Self-defense does not come, an animal that has no concept of property whatsoever can't conceptualize that. If it is being attacked, is not going to be thinking, oh, I own myself, so it's okay for me to defend my life. I think excuse me, but I just think it's a pseudo-intellectual kind of thing where someone's trying to sound more intelligent than they really are. And I'm not saying everyone doing that, but a few in particular that I have in mind, I think that's probably the case. A very vocal one who thinks he's more intelligent than he actually comes across as. Anyway, we've got another caller. We have area code 801. I think it's Utah. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name's John. I actually moved. I'm now in Washington Heights.
Wait, you said your name was John?
Yeah.
All right. Well, John, what can I do for you today?
So I just had a couple of things. I'm kind of new to your program, so I was wondering, first off, what would be the best place to kind of start and get an understanding of the position you're taking with respect to how individuals should approach conflicts with government? Well,
I have a book, Government Indicted, that breaks a lot of stuff down. It gives a complete model for how I and many others have successfully defended ourselves against these bureaucrats. I have
that's the one you'd start with.
That's a pretty good one. Yeah, you can start with the book. You can listen to the shows. I discuss this stuff on every single show. The archives of the show go back years. Not all of them are video like this, but like the Wednesday show that I did, there's a lot of graphics with it. So a lot of what I'm saying, I put in the graphics so that you can see the source.
I'm just trying to get kind of wrap my head around your approach. I've seen a couple of different people's different approaches to it, and I'm just trying to figure out what's going to work best for my situation and that kind of thing. I'm not currently in any kind of trouble, but I I'd like to be as free from government interference in my life as possible, and I understand that that's going to probably bring some attention to me if I'm not too careful.
Well, I would be careful about it. I would not suggest, unless you are doing it as an activist and you understand the consequences, I would not suggest taking the license plate off your car. I would always travel in a car that has a current tag on it. But another thing I would suggest, in addition to my work, I would look at your logical fallacies and basic principles of logic so that you'll be able to recognize a bad argument, and whether it's from me or somebody else. So if I, and even just looking at this, know your logical fallacies is just a graphic and it goes through them. So you can recognize a bad argument, because I believe in being a skeptic, and I like what Christopher Hitchens said, that that asserted, what is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, and basic principle of logic that the one making the claim bears the burden of proof. And so I make a lot of
gratuitous assertion.
Yeah, so analyze my arguments the same way you would a government type or a prosecutor who's hitting you with it. So assume that what I'm saying is false until I give you the evidence and the logic that it is based on. Because I'll admit, it's a pretty bold claim of mine to say that there's no evidence that these written instruments called constitutions and laws apply to anybody. That's a pretty big, pretty bold claim, and I like anyone else, the burden is on me. I have to be able to prove that, and I think I can. I think the fact that we start from government is just men and women, and we can prove that, and that they force everyone in the community to give them money under threat of jail. And if we start from those facts, given those facts, does it make any sense at all that their constitutions, these written instruments, would apply to anybody under those conditions, those facts?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, well,
I think you've given me a good place to start there. Okay.
And I think that nothing is immune from challenge. And if you ever have a situation where somebody is saying that this claim, you just have to accept it on, as true, I think that you're looking at a con man. And so what I recommend doing when you're defending yourself is that we should challenge the prosecutor's claims against you, because he has the burden of proof, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, he's supposed to. The one place I think that I'm not quite sure if that's really the case is the tax courts, and that's my bigger question.
The tax court? Well, all right, we'll get to tax court in just a second. So the second part of how I recommend defending ourselves is we're going to not give the prosecution's claims any free passes, that we're going to challenge all of them. Now, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. I've heard a couple of your shows and things like that where you talk about that extensively, and it definitely makes sense to me.
Right. So it doesn't make any sense to help the prosecution by assuming some of their claims are true.
Yeah.
Right. And the basis of the prosecution's claims, and I have video of the Supreme Court Chief Justice here in Arizona agreeing to this. They'll tell you this. And that's what's important, is that they're saying it to you. It's provable, and they say it, that the basis of their claim is always, if you're physically in Utah, then the laws apply, giving them jurisdiction. And that should be challenged. So just hold on a second. We're up against the break. We'll be right back. Here on the No State Project, talking about some of the basics on how to defend. That is the way all their code violations stem from that argument that if you're physically in Utah, then the laws apply, and there's no evidence to support that whatsoever. But we'll be back in a moment, so don't go away. Yeah, welcome back to the No Stay Project. We've had the all caps name stuff in the comments, and now somebody UCC maritime law. Oy vey. The law we're under is called a force continuum. Do as we say, or you will get hurt. That's it. Everything else is just is just window dressing and public relations. Do as we tell you, or get punished. That's their law. All right. Well, I want to bring back, we got John in Washington Heights. John, let me just ask you, because I'm going to try to get another caller. We've got a couple of minutes, and then I'll try to get another caller. You see the logic and why we would want to follow those three principles of keep the burden of proof and challenge the prosecution's claims. Don't give them any free passes and challenge and always challenge the foundation of their claim, right?
I'm sorry, again?
We're going to challenge the prosecution's claims because the burden of proof is on them. 2, we're not going to give the prosecution any free passes. 3, we're going to challenge hard, zealously and focus most of our attention on the foundation of the prosecution's claims, and that is that if you're physically in Utah, the laws apply.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
Okay.
What about, so you would approach the same way if you're talking about, say, you're physically in the United States of America, that the laws apply to you, the federal laws?
Yes, because you're talking about another constitution. They believe if you're physically or one time were physically in the United States when you were born, that a written instrument written in 1787 not only applies to you, but creates obligations on you. And that's a legal claim. So what evidence they are required to have evidence to prove that that's true. Some will argue, that they don't have to do that. I disagree, because they're not going to allow you and I to make a foundational legal claim against them without any proof.
Right. And their tactic is always going to be to point to the standard, which is the laws or the Constitution or whatever, rather than the evidence that is being put up against the standard or measured against the standard, which is the facts or evidence.
Well, what they'll typically do in court is that they'll point to the code. And they'll say, well, the code says
that's the standard.
Yeah. And so what I recommend doing when they do that to me, and I have calls where I address the actual bureaucrats and prosecutors with this, is, and we can get them to reverse that. And so you ask a leading question, or we should be asking leading questions like this, where it's yes or no, and the information is in the question. And I asked them, isn't that backwards? Isn't the Constitution the authority for the code, not the other way around, like you're asserting? And they'll, well, yeah, you're right. Okay, so if the Constitution is the proof of the code, again, let me ask you, what proof do you have that the Constitution applies just because I'm physically in the United States or I'm physically in Utah?
Okay, so.
And go.
Is there something you can do like preemptively? Like I see some people talk about all kinds of weird, crazy things about your birth certificate and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything that you say that you should be doing preemptively to prevent somebody from coming up against you?
There's nothing. No. I know of no effective. If they attack you and they charge you, file a motion to dismiss and discovery request and start questioning them on the facts they have to support their claims. But preemptively, nah. What I suggest doing is maybe getting some information, some testimony statements you can use against them. So I would go to city council meetings, and I have a couple of them online where I've done it here in Mesa. Well, I did it in Scottsdale. I did it in Tempe, and you can question them on these same things that you would ask in court. Well, you guys operate under the presumption that if I'm physically in Utah, then your laws apply and create all sorts of obligations. And they'll say, well, yeah, of course, so that's how it works. And you say, well, what kind of evidence, what kind of facts, if any, do you rely on to prove that claim is true?
So with respect to that, would you say talk to somebody with the IRS or somebody like that and get them to explain to you what statutes or whatever they think apply to you?
The thing is, you don't know who's actually going to charge you. So you don't know what agent is going to be responsible for the claim. Just like you don't know what cop is going to stop you. And he's the one, and he's, so but if you,
But I'm saying, is there like somebody like in the general sense that you could say, hey, I'm just trying to find out about how to file my taxes. Can you tell me how do I know whether or not certain things apply to me or not?
it may, you
Give
may
them on
not
that
be able to use it. Wow, is that? Oh, come on! Right at the end of the show. So, what I think you can do is, like I mentioned, the city council, and you can go. You can talk to them. You can talk to a city manager, and you can ask them.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about my the federal level than the city, but
you don't know who's. Again, you don't know who's going to be bringing the charge. So, as far as preemptively and being able to use it against them, and at the federal level, no, I wouldn't say that there's anyone, because no matter what is said, you're not going to stop an agent or their computer from attacking you.
Sure.
So,
all right.
I appreciate the call.
So continue to educate myself. All right, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, we're live on Wednesdays also. So if you have other questions, don't hesitate to call.
All right.
I appreciate the call, John. I'm going to drop off the caller line because it looked like I got my resident troll back, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. And I only have a few minutes left anyway. So I did want to address what a friend Chris in North Carolina had brought up, and I don't have too much time to talk about this, but I guess it's a good way to end the show. What do we do when the bureaucrat starts playing dumb? And what I mean by that is it is the political tactic of saying it lying by saying, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't understand what you're getting. And so, unfortunately, what you have to do when they're doing that, we know they're lying. So you got to roll with it. Oh, okay. And I said, just start it over again and use their statements. Sir, aren't you, or doesn't this agency operate under the presumption that if I'm physically in Arizona, that your Constitution and code apply? Yeah. Okay, so you understand that. That's how you operate. Yeah. Can you prove that that's true? So if I ask you, you're able to present evidence that that's true, right? You're not just you could throw them a little snarkiness. You're not just pulling that out of thin air, are you? I mean, you can actually prove that that's true. I mean, because you wouldn't come after me and take my property if that wasn't true. Well, yeah. So it's absolutely true. You can prove right now, and so you spoon feed them. So you can prove this. They were a call of shame. So I'll say that, to our last call, listen to a lot of the call of shame, so you have an idea of how these people will respond to you and how I have responded and what is resolved, what has come from that. So when they play stupid, you gotta just take a deep breath and spoon feed them one little piece at a time. I love when they come out and they say, I don't have to prove that. Okay. Well, just if you're to know if you're operating in good faith or not, can you? Or you got to ask leading questions. Can you do that, or are you just making a baseless claim against me because they'll let you get away with it? Because there are no facts to prove that. And if there were facts to prove that, then all these bureaucrats, including the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, would have just laid them on the table. They wouldn't have said stupid things such as, well, the facts that prove the Constitution applies to you right now, Mark, because you're physically in Arizona, are all the people we've prosecuted and put in prison. And I'll say to those who are new listening to the show, you have to accept that, you have to assume that what they're saying to you is false. And you have to challenge them on. You have to look at the logic about it. Is it logical? Is it a valid argument to say that the other putting other people in prison proves the Constitution and laws apply to me? Yeah, because you have to break it down and look at what they're actually saying. Logic dictates you have to look at, what about the first person they prosecuted? There wasn't a history of anybody else. So the first person they prosecuted could not, under their own argument. It's that easy to show just how ridiculous their claims are. This is why, when you have a prison system, you don't need facts and logic and evidence. You don't need good faith. But hey, I appreciate everyone tuning in today. My name is Mark Stevens. This has been the No State Project for April 20th, 2019. I will be live on Wednesday, so salud.